Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in, CABC family. John Garcia Jr. here. Producer Kev is alongside as well on this Wednesday as we look forward to another week of college football. And as we'll shift gears today, college football recruiting. I know we've been team heavy here at CABC lately, before and building up to that Alabama LSU showdown in Baton Rouge. And of course, the video immediately thereafter. So we do owe it to ourselves to shift to recruiting a little bit. We haven't ignored it altogether, but we haven't spent enough dedicated time to college football recruiting and Crimson Tide football recruiting. So today is that day, and this month will be a big month for Alabama football recruiting. So we're pretty much going to jump right in, and I think a lot of the social media questions we're getting, a lot of the email questions we're getting, even Twitter DM questions, all have to do with a certain five-star committed to another program. And if you are on social media at all, you have seen this play out in some way, shape, or form in the last week or so. So when it comes to social, we go to producer Kev. All right, Kev, what's the social slant? Give us kind of the backstory on this Nolan Smith, Kayvon Thibodeau back and forth. Is it trolling? Is it not? We'll talk about that later, but just give folks the background for those who aren't on social media as much as you and me.
So yeah, as the social media world knows, or if you haven't known, there was a Twitter exchange between Nolan Smith and Kayvon Thibodeau after the LSU game. The LSU commit, Carl Thomas said that he vowed that LSU was not going to beat him while he was there in their 4 years. And there's been a bunch of people quote tweeting it. And one of those happens to be the five-star defensive end that's committed to Georgia, Nolan Smith. Nolan Smith says, LOL, so he's trying to beat us, ? Laughing, crying face. So
I love when you talk about emojis and just verbally, and you have to just say
yeah. You have
great.
you have to say it. So then Kayvon quote tweeted Nolan's quote tweet and said, us ? What is that? Wide looking eyes, I guess. Surprised eyes, maybe.
Surprised eyes emoji.
Surprised eyes emoji. All right. So then they go back and forth a couple more. Nolan Smith says, LOL, crazy, laughing, crying face. Kayvon says, us as in Bama, ? Laughing, crying face, surprise eyes. And then Nolan Smith comes back with, you come in too, and then tags Coach Lupoy. And then
Tosh Lupoy, who of course is recruiting both of these guys,
defensive coordinator. And then the last one comes back with Kayvon tweeting 3 laughing, crying faces and a GIF of Denzel Washington from the movie Training Day.
And y'all know what Denzel says at that point.
Y'all know what that one says, and there's no need for me to go there. So there's been, of course, as soon as Nolan tweeted out that tweet, there's been like 55 replies or 55 retweets and 50 replies and a whole bunch of likes and
a whole bunch of people, scared Bulldog fans too.
A lot of between Bulldog fans freaking out, talking about did I miss something? Blah blah blah. Did you decommit from Georgia? Blah blah blah. I mean, there's been so much stuff. Like, there's so many retweets and quotes and replies talking about, oh my gosh, did you decommit? A lot of Bama fans saying, roll Tide. Like,
welcome to 2018 recruiting Twitter. And look, Nolan Smith, the IMG guys, like we've talked about, they're done. they're done with high school football. So everything for them is about finishing strong academically and putting themselves in position to graduate next month ahead of early enrolling at their schools of choice. So this is true for Nolan Smith, Evan Neal, Trey Sanders, a lot at IMG. Um, but that means there's less football activities and a little bit more free time. The curfew is still intact for those wondering on how strict IMG is. That 10:30, 10:45 curfew is still intact. That's confirmed. But everything else is much more open. Remember, IMG operates on a college level schedule in terms of football. So these guys have position meetings, film, lifting, practice, all of that on a typical day. So a lot of that stuff is kind of vaporized. So no surprise to see them kind of stretching out a little bit more on social media. Now, when it comes to Nolan Smith, this is a smart kid who gets it. We've said it a lot on this show. He understands social media. He understands how to push certain buttons, and Thibodeau as well. I think those guys are kind of on the same level. Now, the difference is one, all this "Are you coming with us?" type stuff, playing together just like we say with wide receivers, George Pickens and Jaden Hazelwood, I say the same thing with Kayvon Thibodeau, Nolan Smith. They're not going to the same school. Could they go to the same school and a school could make it work? Probably. And if that school did exist, it would probably be Alabama. But look, I know Bama fans are spoiled and they expect a lot, and this month is going to be a big reason why Bama gets back to number one and holds on to number one in the recruiting rankings, all that stuff. Yes, but don't kid yourself and think you're going to get the number one and number two player in the 24/7 Sports composite. I don't know if that's ever happened. It certainly hasn't happened for Alabama, and I don't expect to happen with these two guys, considering they play the same position. They're virtually the same guy in terms of where you plug them in on the depth chart, where they're at day one, year one at a school like Alabama. So let's kind of put that there first. I don't know how close they are beyond social media and competing at a lot of camps together. So even though the back and forth was between them, I would say ignore that part if you're an Alabama fan. Now, obviously, the we referring to Alabama and both guys having fun with it publicly and laughing about the notion of both of them going to Alabama is something that should be taken into some consideration from the Nolan Smith side in particular. Kayvon Thibodeau has taken his visits. He already took his Alabama official visit. I think he's going to Florida this weekend. He was at Oregon recently. He's basically wrapping up his trips ahead of a December 15th decision. So Thibodeau's basically winding down his recruitment. Nolan Smith, like we said, as at IMG, things are just now opening up. The schedule is freeing up more now than ever before. So he is expected team trips, including one to Alabama, which he has already said is going to be his first official visit locked in, which is what we believe for the Iron Bowl a couple of weeks from now. So that is where this conversation should be. And that is where the majority of the questions have come in from the Alabama fan side. How much of a shot does Alabama have at Nolan Smith? These are the things we know. One, early on, Alabama was a major contender for Nolan before he committed to Georgia and soon thereafter. After that, it seemed like Alabama and Clemson were the schools that had the best shot to change his mind after he was already verbally committed to Georgia. Now, a lot of time has gone by where basically nobody was a threat. The Clemson conversation died down and is still sort of dead. And the Alabama conversation was kind of just lukewarm with him throughout a long stretch of this thing, as everybody in the industry kind of thought, all right, this kid's from Georgia. He's an IMG guy, number one player in the country on 24/7, all this stuff. But he was kind of done with the recruiting process until the last few weeks where he went out and said, hey, I'm going to take official visits. And the first one to Alabama has been locked in. So that has really jump started the conversation, potentially shifting back to Alabama, at least to some degree. So that is what we know of Nolan Smith. And again, remember, smart kid, understands social media. He gets it. He's been a dude since he was in eighth or ninth grade. So he's used to us in the media. He is used to the attention. He is used to all of it. So always keep that in mind when you think about guys like this. There's trends there that these guys can follow. But if he takes that official visit to the Iron Bowl, which is the expectation, spends time with Tosh Lupoi, we know his other teammates are going to be there as well. Evan Neal, as well as Trey Sanders. Don't discount the closeness of those three. Don't discount how much Bama is leading for those other two. One or two, maybe, of those guys could already be committed to Alabama by the time that visit goes down. That is a realistic scenario. So don't discount those things. So that's why I'm kind of just looking to the basic facts here. If Nolan takes that trip and if the recruitments of Neal and Sanders are on the same trajectory they're at right now, which is a little bit more crimson and white than everything else, then you start to gauge how much of a shot Alabama has. Until that point, until those visits go down, I don't think you put a lot of stock into it. Now, is Georgia worried? Is it on Georgia's radar? Is this the little bing, bing, picking up a little bit, bing, bing, like a battleship's approaching? Yeah, a little bit, because it's Alabama, right? It's the only school that in recruiting has been able to affect Georgia, and Georgia has had a run of some wavering commitments, including some high profile decommitments. Now, Nolan avoided all of those things and is still their flag bearer of that class. But if he takes that visit, that radar will bing a lot quicker than it is right now. So, yes, it's a possibility right now, but let's not focus too much time on it until that visit is actually taken, because it's been a while since Nolan Smith has been in Tuscaloosa. I believe since June was the last time he was in Tuscaloosa. So I think you factor in those things. He's been to Athens many more times, has seen Georgia play many more times, very public about the Bulldogs on Twitter, and still recruiting for Georgia as far as we know. So take it with a grain of salt, but certainly continue to monitor it, is where I would say this whole Alabama Nolan Smith thing currently sits. But if that is the visit and he actually takes it, depending on those other guys, it could get very interesting here at the very, very end for, again, the best player in the country. So it should warrant your attention, but let's not allow it to dominate the entire conversation, because Bama's in position to secure a lot of big time fish here at the very end. But of course, that wasn't the only social media driven slant here that producer Kev's got for us. Kev, what else came across socially that is getting people talking?
The main one after the Nolan Smith deal was there was some Twitter, not Twitter, there was Instagram doings for one Talia, and obviously we all saw the shot on CBS of him walking pregame with Coach O and all that, which
Still never seen that before.
never seen them publicize a recruit being at a game like that. So there was that, and then I posted a picture earlier in the day of him in full LSU gear, and then later on, it was just one of those, typical recruiting photos where they, for some weird reason, they now allow kids to dress in full gear and take pictures, and I'll never understand it. But that's
Hey,
what
Bama does it too now. So
yeah, I mean, that's what goes on in the world of recruiting. Allow the kids to dress in full gear and take pictures. If I was a coach, I don't know if I would allow full gear, but that's what they do. That's the thing now. So there's a picture of him in full LSU gear. It was on his LSU, or it was on his Instagram stories, which they disappear in 24 hours. You get a lot of good stuff off of those because kids think that you don't look at that stuff and they'll disappear quickly. But if you stay on top of it, you find out some good stuff. And then later on, after the game had ended, or towards the end of the game, I found a couple pictures that he had posted, one with Leonard Fournette and one with Darius Geis. Both of them were in LSU locker room. He was wearing the LSU official badge, so I don't know if they considered it an official visit or not, but he was wearing the LSU visitor's badge. So he wasn't just there as Tua's little brother. He was there as a recruit for LSU.
yeah,
And
that was a question coming in, but that question was certainly answered.
Yeah, so we talked about it. We said, is he going to go as a recruit? Is he going to go as to his brother? So yeah, um, he went. He was there, and then the one picture with Darius Geis was captioned, "I love this place." Uh, uh, 100 emoji, I guess.
You're
Um,
just you're on a tough task today, buddy.
so I know these kids and their emojis these days. So it was, I love this place, 100 emoji, and then a smiley face. So we've said it before, I think, and I think this kind of solidifies what we've said, that LSU is the only LSU is a legitimate threat and is the only threat to Bama when it comes to Talia, I believe. So that was my social media findings over the weekend, and or at least the ones that I felt warranted um, to be brought up on this. So yeah, um, I do believe that, going back to the Nolan and the where you were talking Nolan and Kayvon going back and forth, and they both are very social media heavy guys. They love social, like, and they promote on social media, they recruit on social media and all of that. And there's been a lot of trending things where it was trending. There was a lot of trend Bama for Nolan Smith. There's a lot of trending Bama for Thibodeau, and then here recently the swing has been Oregon for Thibodeau and Bama still for Nolan. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. So I think both of those guys will play out soon, and the Talia's. I think LSU's a legitimate threat for Talia as well. So that was my
Yeah,
social media.
still the only threat to me. I know Georgia offered, and I know the conversation is going to shift to Georgia for basically for a lot of Alabama related things. But recruiting wise, with Talia, I think LSU is the only threat. He's been there multiple times. The family has been there multiple times. And like you said, this was a multi-day stay in Baton Rouge as a recruit. He was at the Tennessee game, but he was in the stands, right? We saw him at the national championship game. Probably the only other time he's been on television, that was ESPN, but that was with his family in the stands. And then after the game, showing some love to his brother, who just became an Alabama legend that, forever, no matter what he did this year. And he's only building upon that. So there's that as well. So that's the difference. I don't know if Tennessee will get something like that, and I don't think Georgia will get something like that. Remember, Talia, just like we said with Nolan and a lot of these high-profile guys, they're signing in December. They're signing next month. 1 month, 12 days from today, December 19th. That early signing period begins. So as of this moment, I still very much expect Talia to sign with Alabama, but there is something to be said for LSU basically getting more time out of him and his family than any other school lately. So I think there is still something to be said for that. But again, this weekend, I expect Talia in Tuscaloosa for the Iron Bowl. I expect Talia in Tuscaloosa. And in January, I expect Talia in Tuscaloosa. But, you can't blame LSU, right? I mean, you have a selling point, right? Hey, y'all kicked our ass. So come help us try to return the favor and go against Big Bro next year. Because why not? Why not? And again, Talia's walking with Coach O pregame at the 50-yard line. So that's obviously the type of priority level that he is for LSU, who does have a quarterback committed, but they want to bring in multiple quarterbacks this year, just like Alabama is doing with Leah, as well as Paul Tyson, a couple of in-state legacies there. So yeah, social media that caught some buzz. Kevin sent me over the I love this place photo, which I hadn't seen. I don't have Instagram, and I tweeted it, and I had to shut my phone off for a little bit because the LSU fans went wild, and there was like hundreds of likes on there. So it was it caught some attention. It caught people's attention. So I just thought we would start the show today by kind of just looking back at socially the last 4 or 5 days outside of the Bama LSU football game. There's been a lot of recruiting storylines that have begun to play out or at least spark some interest there socially. And I know a lot of you guys aren't on social media. We're not on there enough. It seems like we try to just kind of catch up and put things in their place. But as we've said, this time is going to be very important for Alabama this month, obviously before the early signing period. But it's the last string of games at Bryant-Denny for Alabama. So that begins Saturday against Mississippi State. There is going to be a very healthy visitor list and an interesting official visitor list that is still materializing. Again, throughout the month, we expect many more names to be added. But even if you just look on the surface here at this official visitor list for Mississippi State, I mean, Jordan Battle, that's a guy we're going to continue to talk about. One of the top safeties in America, top 50 prospect in America, plays at St. Thomas, where Braylon Ingram, the recent Alabama commitment, the most recent Alabama commitment, is on that defense as well. That cannot hurt. And he's committed to Ohio State. So there's a lot of question marks around that program as to next year and beyond. And I think that is becoming a big part of the process for Jordan Battle as Alabama, Miami, Oklahoma, many other schools try to kind of jump in and go all in with a safety who, again, this is a great year for safeties, and Daxton Hill was the guy we've talked about over the longest standing period on this program before he committed to Michigan. Jordan Battle's probably number 2 right there, and it's not a huge gap. I would say the gap between Hill and Battle is smaller than the gap between Battle and the next guy, in my opinion, just from scouting these guys in person, on tape, etc. So that's another one, like we say with Nolan Smith. If he makes that trip this weekend, start to perk your ears up as a Bama fan, because that is a huge, huge momentous movement for Alabama. Again, DB and D line are kind of tricky. Bama's navigating these waters very carefully. You saw, Rashad Cheney kind of decommit very low key, very off radar, very quietly. Wasn't tweet like bashing Bama, anything like that. It's very low key through other people type of decommitment. And y'all know what that means. Y'all have been around enough to know what that means. My point is that the waters are very tricky to navigate right now at those positions, meaning there's not a lot of spots left and there's a lot of elite guys left. So sometimes it means you got to cut loose something you already have on your theoretical roster. So I wouldn't be shocked if that happened again in the trenches or maybe even in the secondary, and read into that as much as you want. But if a guy like Jordan Battle's available and he shows interest and he wants to pop, I don't see Bama saying no. And then you consider the remaining targets there at DB. You got Akeem Dent, another guy who's committed elsewhere, 5-star committed to Florida State. You've got Tyreek Stevenson down in Miami, who's uncommitted, former Gator commitment. Noah Pola-Gates out in Arizona. He's one that has been talking about waiting to make a commitment. So you wonder how much of a green light will he have by the time he visits Alabama later this month. Big time player there. There's a former LSU commitment, Marcus Banks, a corner in the conversation from Texas. I believe USC just offered him before we came on the show. So his stock is sort of soaring here. Jeffrey Carter, who's committed to A&M, I believe, is another DB. So you see what I'm saying here. And we could say the same thing with D-line with all these other prospects, right? Robinson, Sopsher, Tuitele. It goes on and on. There's a lot of names for what? One spot, maybe 2 spots. So you do the math, right? It's very, very simple. But we're telling you how potentially high on the board Jordan Battle is with his visit coming this weekend. If he makes that trip, which is the expectation, ears should perk up, not only in Columbus, but in Tuscaloosa, because I think Bama will jump to that school that has the best shot at changing his mind from that Ohio State verbal commitment. So look up Jordan Battle. The kid's a baller. The kid is a baller. So that's one official visitor this weekend. Another official visitor actually comes from the state of Texas, and this one is interesting too positionally. We talk about guys who we sort of expect in the class, and we've mentioned Trey Sanders already. DeAndre Glass is on the official visit list for Alabama. You hadn't heard a lot about him other than when he got that offer from Alabama. He was kind of on that secondary list at running back behind the Trey Sanders of the world. So when you think of positions and you think of spots, you got one committed in Keelan Robinson. Trey Sanders, we know, is visiting for the Iron Bowl. Glass is visiting this weekend. Tyrion Davis already visited the LSU commitment from Baton Rouge. Jaron Ely is an Ole Miss commitment who you're looking to flip, but he might be a Major League Baseball first-round pick, so he might not play football ever again after this year. But again, a lot of spots or a lot of names for maybe one spot. So interesting with DeAndre Glass taking that official visit this week. And he's another one that if he does make the trip, which is the plan right now, I think it should be a little bit more interesting to track him than we are right now. But as I don't know if this is a social slant for Kev, but another guy who affects that is John Emery, another five-star running back like Trey Sanders. And that's really the debate right now. I'll be honest with you. We're having rankings conversations at 24/7 Sports right now about the top 247 in the class of 2019. And right now the conversation is Sanders is number one right now. Do you leave him there, or can Emery close the gap, maybe even overtake him? And that's where it's been pretty split, to be honest. But the point is they're both very good. And the point is that there may not be room for both in this Alabama class. And again, these are two guys who, again, you don't expect these two guys at the same position to. You can do any position and play this game and be right more times than not when in terms of two of the top available prospects at one position. They're probably not going to go to the same school. And I think Emery and Sanders are in that boat right now. And they've got a couple of schools that they're each still interested in LSU, which is probably the overwhelming favorite now for John Emery, considering he's a Louisiana kid and he decommitted from Georgia, as well as Alabama, who we talked about, what was that Saturday, Kev? That when he decommitted, Bama was going to kick the tires on that thing and see what it's looking like. And now there is talk that Emery could visit Alabama here in the near future, as early as Saturday. That's unconfirmed, but there is talk that a visit could go down and that Alabama is in the conversation. His father told 24/7 Sports that Alabama is beginning to push there. So again, how many names have we named for running back and how many spots are there? We think it's one, but how many spots really are there? So that's where again the interest continues to climb as we get further into November. It's only November 7th, and we're already like, how is Bama going to figure this thing out in terms of overall spots? And that's just at a few positions. We haven't even really run the gamut there. But John Emery, another guy we haven't talked enough about, is another one to keep an eye on at running back for Alabama. And again, for my money, I take Emery over Sanders, but the gap is very, very small. Sanders had a very good senior year. He slimmed down, focused on being a more well-rounded running back, catch the ball out of the backfield, play better in space, things like that. And the Hoover defense saw that up close and personal a couple of Fridays ago, and you probably saw some highlights there, if not the game itself as well. Emery's already kind of there in terms of space, catching the ball out of the backfield, being a three-down guy. So it's very close between these two guys, but they are clearly the two best backs in the class. So there's a lot to sort out here with recruiting. And I know, Kev, that we got some questions already in about recruiting as before we ramble too much further.
Yeah, we have some social media questions that we have been not as good at taking care of those as we should be, and we apologize for that. So we will start with Twitter. And
good old Twitter.
Kevin Johnston says
Twitter's the only one that I don't suck at.
It's the only one I suck at. So love the show. How many guys do you think we finished with in this class out of Sanders, Webb, Neal, and Dean? So Trey Sanders, Clay Webb, Evan Neal, and Nakobe Dean. That's a good question. Those are big, all big names when it comes to this recruiting cycle. And I mean,
who do you feel best about with those names? Just the one guy you feel best about.
The one guy that I feel the best about would be Evan Neal. Other than that, Nakobe Dean is, I mean, he's kind of like a unicorn if you can get him on campus, apparently, because he schedules visits and misses some of them. I mean, I think he's been scheduled, twice at Bama this year and hasn't shown either time.
Now he's shown up at least once.
Well, I know. Yeah, and he took his official early to Bama.
Yep, in June.
In June, and then Trey Sanders, and Evan Neal, I feel are probably close on the same. I feel pretty good about both of them, and then Clay Webb, like, who knows? Like
Clay Webb and Dean, man, I'm like, man, everybody has a different guess right now.
I know, like
everybody.
And me and you have joked and said this. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if like Clay Webb commits to UAB or something. Like,
go Blazers.
You know what I'm saying? But I mean, it's just like that's just who the kid is. I mean, we don't know. Like, nobody has a read on him. Nobody, he doesn't really talk. He's like,
he doesn't talk at all. It's not doesn't really talk.
He doesn't really talk. He doesn't
at
talk
all. We have y'all like. We have seen this kid in person and he hasn't spoken. And obviously we respect that if the kid doesn't want to talk, but that has happened more than once to more than one of us. So, and again, we've been covering the kid since he was a freshman. So not a bad thing, not an indictment, but it is a true sample of who Clay Webb is. He doesn't understand why we care and he doesn't want to talk about it. Even though he doesn't understand why we don't care. So, yeah, that's going to be that recruitment is it still feels like it's far from over, even though we know it's a month and 12 days away from being over. It still feels like there are things to be had there. He's one that
he feels like a February guy right now, but I know he's not. But just the way his recruitment has played out, he feels like one of these February guys that's taking their time.
Right.
Really, but that could go with. He doesn't talk, so no one knows really what he's thinking.
Yeah, and I actually talked to an ACC source who's very familiar with Clay from the other side, and this notion that he fits these less intense programs better starting to bother me. Because yes, he's a different kid, and he is his own kid, but that doesn't mean he's not a competitor. It doesn't mean he's not a grunt and a boss and a ghoul and a goon in the trenches. Like, he is all of those things.
If you watch his film,
just watch him. Just watch him.
Like, he's one of those nasty linemen.
He's a nasty dude. Now, he's not going to tell you how nasty he is, but he is a nasty dude who you don't F with on or off the field, which I will not expand on. So this notion of, he fits the culture better at school X and Y. And look, there's 4 schools in it: Bama, Georgia, Auburn, Clemson. Which 2 are the intense in theory and which 2 are not in theory? There's 2 of them named Tigers and there's 2 of them not. And you could figure out the categories there. And there is a notion that Clay Webb fits those guys better because of how he is. Like, well, he's a nasty O lineman. I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of Georgia and Bama O linemen that are pretty nasty on the field. And again, if he's an introvert, which I don't know if we should label him that, but let's say he is, that's going to be different and outside the box at every school, right? At every college campus. He's not going to be the typical 5-star, no matter if he goes to UAB, like Kev said, or Jacksonville State, where it's right around the corner from his house. That's going to be the case regardless. But when the helmet's strapped on, and the whistles are blowing and it means something, Clay is Clay. Clay is a dog, and he is a guy who I think is one of the safest 5-star bets in this class. So that is the prevailing thought, and that's the reason why nobody has slowed down for Clay. But again, I keep hearing that's the new thought. The old thought was longtime Bama fan, family likes Bama, tight with Clay or with Pierce, and Paul and all that stuff. Brent Key's been doing a good job. He's going to go to Bama. That was the early notion, and everybody kind of just conceded that in the industry. But now the notion has strongly become, does he fit at Alabama? Does he fit at Georgia? What does that mean? Like, explain to me what that means, because look at the quarterbacks at Alabama. You couldn't have 3 more different quarterbacks, personality-wise, than Jalen Hurts, Tua Tagovailoa, and Mac Jones. So you could have argued at one point or the other, does Tua, imagine, go 2 years ago, does Tua Tagovailoa, the lefty Hawaiian who's all about family, very religious. Does he fit at an Alabama compared to some other schools?
No.
That could have popped up, right? But again, nobody's questioning any of those things now. Nobody's questioning any of those things. Like Mac Jones, other side of the spectrum. Like nobody's questioning any of those things. So I think when a kid is high profile for so long, like Clay has been since he was a freshman, we go way overboard in looking at this kid's recruitment. And I'm not saying that Auburn and Clemson. I think Clemson could be moving into the top two with his recruitment, and he's been there 2 of the last 3 or 4 weeks. But if he picks Clemson, it's not because he didn't fit elsewhere. If he picks Clemson, it's because he liked Clemson. It's like, did Justin Ross like not fit at Alabama, so he went to Clemson? No. Clemson's wide receiver U, and he wanted to catch a ton of passes. And Pro Football Focus today said he's the best freshman receiver in the country based on the numbers. Like, good decision, kid. What do you want him to do? So I don't know. The Clay Webb coverage has made a lot of twists and turns, and that's why it feels like there's still a few left before all is said and done. But don't give me, he's a different kid, so he can't handle 2-a-days at Bama. Like, y'all watch the program. It's not junction book. It's not something that's gonna make people quit, like it might have back in the day. And again, what does that have to do on the field with football with a kid like Clay? So I'm going to leave that alone. But what was the original question? Because I'm all off on this personality tangent.
Who do you think we end up in the class out of that group? Dean, Webb,
Clay,
Sanders, and Evan Neal.
I think Bama gets at least 2, possibly 3. They're not going to get all 4. It's just the odds of 5-star recruiting. I think Dean and Webb are the least secure of those guys, mainly because 4+ teams feel good about each of them. Like Georgia feels great about Dean. Bama feels great about Dean. LSU feels good about Dean. Auburn, after his official visit last weekend, now feels good about Dean. So that thing has changed and shifted, and I don't know if Dean even knows. And then with Clay, we just mentioned it. Clemson feels good right now. 2 visits in the last month. Auburn has long felt good. Bama has felt good longer than anybody, and we know about the family ties to Athens, Georgia, where he has spent a lot of time this year. So that guess is now as good as anybody's for Clay Webb. So those guys feel a little bit more fluid as opposed to Neal, where it's pretty much Bama number 1, Miami number 2, maybe LSU, Oklahoma fighting for a visit at best. And with Trey Sanders, it's Bama 1, Florida 2, maybe LSU, Georgia, Miami in there, Florida State somewhere thereafter, Texas. Yeah, it's less clear after that, but we know kind of the early pecking order there. So I'll say for sure 2, maybe 3 of those guys, but I'll say Bama does not get all 4.
All right. Moving to a Instagram question. We had Dylan asked, hey, John, it's been a while since I sent in a question, been slammed at work. We know how that feels. I have 2 questions for you. Who do you think will be the next defensive player to commit? And also, do you think UGA will be a tougher test than LSU was for Bama? I think UGA has a lot better offense than LSU, but a very young defense. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts.
I have a lot of questions in one.
What are yours?
All right, well, I'm going to go to the Georgia LSU question first. Yeah, Georgia's, of course, going to be a bigger competition than LSU because Georgia has an offense.
Yes.
Should I expand or?
No, that's true. That's true.
Look, Georgia's defense is not quite as talented or as good as LSU's, but they're not far from there. And Georgia has a solid offense that is seemingly getting better and realizing their identity when it counts most. They're going to run the ball and play good football and play smart football with Jake Fromm in the passing game. But Jake can go out there and do some things on his own this year as opposed to last year where they were kind of doing it around Fromm as a freshman. Now Fromm is, on 3rd and 8, they're like, go sling it, go get it, and then he is. And he showed that, I thought, in a big way the last couple of weeks against Florida and Kentucky. He was really good in those games, and I think he'll continue to be really good. But I'm not picking them to beat Bama. I don't think anybody's going to be favored against Alabama, including Clemson, and I don't think anybody can keep it as close as Clemson. So, will it be a better game than LSU? Yeah, I don't think Bama will win by 29, if that's what you're asking. No, I don't think that's going to happen. But could I see a similar, slow start and, those guys making some plays to at least make it interesting early? Yeah, I can absolutely see that. And I think Georgia's offense will not score 0 points against Alabama like LSU's did. It was never really a threat with LSU at any point until the very, very end. And Mac Wilson's, tweeted about interception sealed that. So I don't expect it to be that type of game. But I could see Georgia defensively starting out that way, but offensively, there's no way that Bama shuts them out. In my opinion, it could happen, but I don't see that happening just based off of the talent, the NFL talent that Georgia has, and them finally committing to the running game and using Fromm off of that without the whole Justin Fields distraction. I think that's been good for them, and they've looked right here these last couple weeks. What was the other question, Kev?
It was sorry. Go back to it. It was who do you think will be the next defensive commit that Alabama picks up?
The next defensive commit. Good question. Bama's coming off of getting a defensive commitment with Braylon Ingram. I think with Jordan Battle visiting this week, and he's so intriguing. He's one of my favorite players in the class. I'm a DB snob. He's the best safety I've seen in person more than once because I've only seen Daxton Hill once in person, but I've seen Battle at local camps, national camps, on TV. You need that guy on your football team if you're Alabama. So I think there's going to be some DB movement here at some point soon. Could it be Battle? Could it be Noah Pola Gates? Maybe on the visit they're saying, hey, I know you want to wait till February, but we don't have that luxury at Alabama. You got to jump in now or stay on the West Coast maybe or go to Penn State. Maybe it's Pola Gates, but I look for a safety type to be the next guy. I don't think Nakobe Dean's going to be that next guy at linebacker. Henry To'oTo'o is a guy that Bama feels really good about and is about the best thing you could hope for if you don't get Dean, but I don't think he's ready to pop just yet. And on the defensive line, it seems like that group is so small. That group of kids who I think have the green light right now, and we know the number one guy on the board is a February guy with Ishmael Sopsher. So that makes me think DB. And you got one big time one visiting this weekend and another one visiting later in the month. So I'll go DB as the next position to make a move, and I'll probably lean Pola Gates over Battle, although it wouldn't floor me if Battle found everything he needed to find out about Alabama this coming weekend. So it's a big official visitor weekend just because he's on that list, no matter who else gets added to it. But on defense, I look for the secondary to be kind of the next stop before linebackers, edge rushers, and D linemen jump in.
Nice. I agree. I agree with you on it. I think DB is definitely the next one to come. So, and I think you're right. Pola Gates is a good. I think would be the safer of the two, but Battle being on campus is big time for you. So,
yeah, like watch his tape after you subscribe to us here and watch the rest of this. Go watch Jordan Battle and then be like, oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's all we have from our social media accounts. So we could look through. We can look through the live chat here and see if we can get some more going. We've kind of answered some of these, talking about not a lot of spots left remaining. Five should be heavy 5 stars. Your take. We've kind of answered that about who we feel good about. I think who Bama feels good about. Question: How do some recruits feel when they go to a school that underperforms, which causes them not to develop?
Is this an Auburn or an LSU question?
I feel like it's geared towards one of them, if not both. I mean, you see a lot. That's why we're seeing a lot of kids transfer. I feel like, a lot of kids are feeling like they're not getting developed the way they should be, and we've seen a mass exodus of quarterbacks this year. So that could go with either not getting developed, or it could go with, not wanting to compete for a job. But I think that they find out real quick whether they're going to get developed the way they want to, and if they don't, they usually leave. So, John,
Yeah, I mean, development I think is a relative term now anyway. These quarterbacks leaving after less than a year really are crazy, and we're starting to see other positions do it too, where guys
yeah,
are just bolting. And if they're and now we're even seeing it. I don't know if you guys have seen Louisville in the last week. Now kids are bolting at the thought of a coach not being there before the coach is actually gone. Now, is Bobby Petrino going to remain the coach? Probably not, but they've lost 3 or 4 or 5 guys already, young guys, good players who have played as freshmen. They're losing those kind of guys already. So I don't think it's all about development for these kids. I think kids want stability, even though they don't show that on their end as well. So I think development is leaving before you're developed, if you will. I think that is becoming the norm, but I don't think it's just because of development. I don't know if that makes sense, if I put that in the right way. But people are leaving for a lot of reasons, and they're leaving at the first sign of adversity. Kids are leaving,
yeah,
and that's a problem in general and in society probably. But I don't think it's about development. I think it's about being comfortable, and I think it's de-recruiting development that is driving these kids out. What I mean by that is a lot of these kids that are 5 stars and highly recruited, they're just so comfortable with these schools before they get there because of how long they've been recruited, and they're committed, and they every time they go, everyone's so happy to see them. The room lights up, and you got the recruiting assistants and the food, and everything is just beautiful. It's a king like life.
we know
And
how.
then
Even we know how that was when
right,
we went on recruiting visits, and
sure.
that first
Um,
the first day you go out to practice, and the coach that's been, oh, I love you so, like, please come to my school, is now yelling at you in your face and calling you names that you've never heard before. Like, now you're like, oh crap, what I get myself into? Like,
Right. So that's the process of being de-recruited, where now you're a number. You're another guy on the roster. You're the last guy on the depth chart. Deal with it. Now you got to deal with that. And these 18-year-olds are like, what happened to that other dude? It was like 2 weeks ago.
yeah,
So I think that's part of it as well. And that kind of kicks off the de-recruiting development. Those kids need to be kind of decompressed there, and that's kids are bolting because of that as well. And it's again, is that more societal? Probably, but my point is that a lot of kids are leaving for a lot of different reasons. Now, the question was, what happens to those kids who see a school underperform and it kind of proves a lack of development? I feel like that's an Auburn LSU question. Auburn maybe at quarterback, LSU at a lot of offensive positions. Um, it goes both ways. It's kind of like recruiting in general. I think that's something that can be sold as, yeah, we hadn't figured it out, but you can help us figure it out. And it's also on the other side of it. I think that could drive kids away. Right now, if you're Bo Nix committed to Auburn and you see reports that Kelly Bryant is now talking to Auburn and in position, what does Bo Nix feel about that as the next guy? Even more so than Bo Nix, what about the quarterbacks that they just brought in? What about Joey Gatewood? What about Malik Willis, who are on that roster? And you don't have to Google very much to find out that Gus has a lot of success with JUCO and transfer quarterbacks. So if you're not one of those guys and you hear the conversations picking up about Kelly Bryant or a transfer type in communication with Gus, that could be a red flag to your own development. So I think it goes both ways, but these kids are very aware nowadays, and I think that they're so up on social media and media in general and the conversations surrounding their programs that they can. It's almost like a preemptive strike. Like they're going to leave before it gets crazy, and you're seeing that at Louisville. You could see it at Auburn. You could see it at a lot of schools that are not up to expectations. So I don't think development is as much of a question there outside of some obvious ones like LSU at quarterback, Auburn at quarterback with high school kids, things like that. But it's not scaring Bo Nix. But you wonder, could that run off Joey Gatewood, Malik Willis, some of these other guys on that roster? I wouldn't be shocked if it did. That's not scoop. I'm just saying I wouldn't be shocked if that happened, just because of the nature of today's kid and the nature of everyone being so aware of the scuttlebutt around each program. So that's where I'm at there. But does it suck for a kid who's committed to LSU seeing LSU get romped 29-0? Yeah, it sucks. Look at Cardell Thomas's Twitter. That tweet caused reaction from everybody, including Alabama players laughing at it. Somebody hit him with the Kawhi laughing emoji. That's like the ultimate, that's the ultimate laugh right now in the social media world. It was Chris Owens, the backup O lineman. Cardell Thomas says he will never lose to Alabama. So if you're wondering what seeing that in person is like as an LSU commit, it's Cardell Thomas's Twitter account. That's what it's like. It is. It's not fun. So.
Yeah, that's definitely the go-to GIF right now. Let's see. We go through here. Do you think Williams and Turnage will be CBs at Bama? Looking at film, they look a little slow-footed.
Yeah, Christian Williams, Brandon Turnage, 2 4-star DBs committed to Bama. I've long said that Christian Williams, since I saw him in the summer, is more of a combo guy to me. I think he's poor man Shaheem Carter right now, which is not a bad thing at all. I'm a big fan of Shaheem Carter, but I don't think he is a true outside corner at this moment. I think he could be a safety or a nickel guy, much like Shaheem has become. So, no, I don't see Christian as a true corner. Turnage, I think, is a really good safety already. He plays a lot of corner. If they've got a big-time receiver, his school will let him tangle with that guy. But that's a high school thing. I think that's just like these great DBs being used as offensive players in high school just because they're the best athlete on the team. I think that's more of a high school thing, not something that you have to worry about at the next level. I do believe Bama is very high on Turnage, and I do think he's a safety at this point. But again, when it comes to the shuffle, there could be movement in the secondary. So if that is to be, those are 2 guys who have each taken visits to several other schools. Christian Williams was just at LSU. Mobile is closer to Baton Rouge than Tuscaloosa. I've said that more than once, and LSU's been high on him for quite some time. Could that flip happen? Yes. Would Bama be devastated? I don't know that answer, but I would lean towards no if and only if they've got other guys in position to take those spots. Are they there yet? Do they have guys in position to take those spots? I don't think so. And again, Bama likes Christian Williams. There's the whole pushing guys out thing, I think, might have happened elsewhere already, and it might happen at another position, but I don't know if that's the case with Christian Williams. But he has taken visits elsewhere. So that's something that Bama will take into consideration with their evaluation. Williams has had a good senior season, not an elite senior season, but a good, solid senior season for who he is. And for who he is, in my opinion, is a combination defensive back. So, no, I don't think either of those 2 guys, to answer the question, will be true outside corners. And I think that's why you're seeing Bama continue to recruit Akeem Dent, continue to recruit Stevenson, continue to recruit Noah Pola-Gates, and Jeff Carter, Marcus Banks. There's a lot of corners out there that Bama is still in on, and I think that could be part of the reason. I think if we're saying it, we would assume Bama has realized that sometime before then. So, no, they're not pure corners to me, and I don't think they'll play corner at Alabama.
Good deal. Moving down the list, do you think here we go. Do you think we get Pickens?
Very, very simple.
The ever evident George Pickens question that we get all the time.
As we should, because he's like Clay Webb. We ain't talking to him either.
Yeah, and I mean he's kind of on the opposite end from Clay Webb, where he's not so much introverted. He talks, but it seems to change. It seems to change.
Like I see you navigating in your mind. Like I see the wheels turning.
So I mean, he's definitely out there and on social media and all that stuff, and everybody knows he's committed to to Auburn, and there was a lot of buzz with Hazelwood's decommitment from Georgia. There was a lot of Auburn buzz with that, which is kind of slowed down after this past weekend.
Yeah, Hazelwood ain't going to Auburn.
Yeah, so if you don't know, he was asked.
Well, he's just not going. Just leave it there.
Yep, he was. I don't think that's going to be a big thing anymore. So now I think Pickens is probably more, more of a sure thing for Auburn now, especially with losing Hazelwood. So
yeah, I think that helps Auburn actually.
Yeah. So do I think that he flips to Bama? Probably not at this point.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these guys we talk about today are guys who it's going to end real soon. With Pickens, it's not. So I think that's part of the conversation to remember. I could see Pickens taking 3-4 officials in January before truly being done, and at that point, you'll know the fate with Hazelwood. You'll know the fate with a lot of other guys. So I think there will be a refocus, and it can't be said enough because this is only the second year of the early signing period. When schools like Bama get 20 of their 25 guys, let's say, signed in December, those last 5 guys, they get a different type of full court press because it is all the resources to a very small pool of 2019 guys when it comes to in-home visits, when it comes to official visits and things like that. That's where it really intensifies for those guys. And that's where that's where the helicopters start dropping everywhere. So that's where, if you think of George Pickens being a Hoover guy, being an in-stater, being one who Bama has liked for the long term, that's one guy where you start to think at the end, that's where you expect the strong Bama push to resonate. Now, can Pickens show up for the Iron Bowl, and would Bama host him? Of course they would. But will we know something definitive at that point? Of course we will not. So I think he's a guy you at the very end, that could be the kind of crown jewel of the February signees for a school like Alabama. And mainly that wide receiver pool is not a big one. We have not seen Alabama recruiting a ton of receivers. Wanda Robinson committed to Kentucky at the 11th hour when it looked like he was a done deal to Nebraska. He was a done deal to Nebraska. If y'all are going to make a crystal ball joke here, it was done. So something happened thereafter. I'll leave that there. But my point is that Alabama wasn't pushing. Alabama did not kick down the door for Wandale Robinson there at the very end. So I think that was kind of a sign that, hey, this receiver recruiting is going to slow down to a very slow pace before the December signing period. Now, after, I expect it to ramp up again if there's a spot left. And if there's a spot left, there's no doubt in my mind that George Pickens will be that top threat for Alabama. So I expect a mega push there late, a push that everybody can kind of see and evaluate. So I think that will be an 11th hour deal if Bama gets Pickens. But right now with the Hazelwood situation, I think that helps Auburn kind of reestablish control of George Pickens and remind him, hey, you're our top guy. You're our guy committed. You're our guy who's been committed for a year and a half now. We're riding with you. So how much that will matter, I don't know. But I expect Auburn to feel great about Pickens right now after not having the best two-way visit there with the Hazelwoods this past weekend.
Yes. And then moving down on here, let's see, there we were. And comments. I feel like Clemson's the only team that has depth to keep up with Bama, probably.
I would agree with that.
Yes. Okay. Who is your favorite recruit this class that nobody is giving enough attention to? Doesn't have to be Bama related.
Well, man, I just gave a lot of attention to Jordan Battle. Yeah. Doesn't have to be Bama related. Well, that widens the pool for me pretty good. I love the kid Auburn got today. Nehemiah Pritchett, Mobile kid, Jackson High School, long, 6'1", 4.4 speed guy, edgy kid in the secondary. I'm a little partial there. Big fan of his. Auburn almost dropped the ball here. This kid crushed the Auburn camp in June. I was there that day. I actually I have video of it. I posted video of it. This kid ran 4.4 and shut down receivers at the Auburn camp and closed the gap when he was beat on routes, as well as anybody I've seen in the class this cycle. And I thought Auburn was going to beat down the door for his commitment out on that day. They offered him, but they didn't beat down the door. And since then, Virginia Tech, Minnesota, a bunch of other schools have offered, and you wondered if Auburn was going to lose out, but he committed to the Tigers today. So he's one of my favorite kids on and off the field in this class. I have a growing admiration for Will Putnam, an offensive lineman from Tampa, where I live. I'm actually going to go see him tomorrow. He's getting his All-American Bowl jersey. Military kid like me, state wrestling champion 3 years running, which means he won it as a freaking freshman. Interior guy, plays tackle. He is so dominant on Friday nights at a high level in playing high school ball in Tampa that he induces personal fouls because kids are frustrated because he's pancaking them. They're slapping him after the play. They're pissed off. He's getting nut shots. He pisses kids off. And I love offensive linemen that just make kids get out of character against them. And Will Putnam is that guy in Florida. He's a lot like Clay Webb, and there's actually a lot of teams that are in competition for both Clemson, Auburn, mainly those two. And I think when Clay Webb makes his decision, Putnam's decision will already be known. So if there's a school that backs off of Clay Webb, it's because they got Will Putnam. He's that good. He's a top 100 guy, again, All-American type. He's a little more versatile than Clay. I think Clay is a true center, maybe guard. Putnam, I think, can play all three spots at the next level. Very similar wrestling champion. They're trim guys. They're not overly fat. And they're just mean dudes on the field. They piss people off. I like linemen that piss people off. So Will Putnam's another guy who's one of my favorites. And I think that's a good gauge of Clay Webb's recruitment. I think Putnam's taking an official later this month to Clemson, and that's his last one. And he'll decide between Clemson, Auburn, and FSU. So once that decision comes down, if it's Auburn or FSU, that could affect the Clay Webb recruiting decision. I don't think any school would say no or stop recruiting Clay Webb, but it could affect how much of a need Clay Webb is. If Will Putnam goes to Clemson, I think they don't need Clay Webb as much, and I think that could be a nice little surprise for another school that still very much needs Clay Webb, like in Alabama, like in Auburn, et cetera. So I would keep an eye on Will Putnam, actually. I think there could be a little bit of a trickle-down effect with his recruitment, but he's one of my favorite cats in the class. Looking forward to seeing him tomorrow. And again, if you want to have some fun, watch his tape. That is a fun tape that a guy like Kevin I know will really like.
Yeah, you sent me his tape after the last game that you went to go see, and I really like that kid. I think he's on that same level. He's that dirty offensive lineman. He gets in, and when I say dirty, I don't mean he's cheap shotting kids.
Dirty in a good way.
He's just finishing. He's finishing blocks. He's finishing people at every level: first level, second level, third level. He's finishing blocks, and I really like him. The fact that he's a 3-time state wrestling champion just helps him out even more in his toughness and all that stuff, because you got to be pretty tough to win state of Florida wrestling as a freshman. That's a pretty good. It's pretty
dumb.
Good. Yeah. I'll keep my not getting enough love. I'll keep mine Bama related. I think Darian Dalcourt is going to be a pretty good player when it comes to his time at Alabama. Not a lot of buzz around him. I know we covered it when he committed and that stuff. He's the 4-star out of Baltimore, St. Francis Academy, the same school that linebacker
Shane Lee
is out of, which that program has been a powerhouse. They've turned it into a powerhouse in the Baltimore area. So I think he's he'll be a very good offensive lineman. He's more of a true guard. I know we have a lot of our class right now. The Alabama class right now is very tackle heavy, and I think Dalcourt is a true guard. So it's a good addition to the class for them. But yeah, we've talked about him a little bit, but I think, for as little as we've talked about him, he's going to be a lot better at Bama the little we've talked about him.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, we're talking Clay Webb and Pierce Quick and Amari Kite, Evan Neal maybe. I mean, it's tough to get to him and Tanner Bowles, who are. It's not like they're sleepers. They're legit 4 stars, top 247 guys. But it's just hard to ignore those bullies that we honestly we see a lot more too with him being a DC guy. So yeah.
Keeping it in the live chat. Not a Bama question, and that's okay. How do you feel about the Auburn AD coming out and saying Gus Malzahn isn't going anywhere? If you're a Bama fan, you're happy.
Well, if you follow Crimson and Blue Chips on Twitter, you might have seen a little reaction GIF that I posted to that news. They, if you're a Bama fan, you got to be happy about that, right? And if you're an Auburn fan, you can't be surprised. What are they going to spend $40 million and get rid of him to hire who? Who you're going to bring Les Miles in? I mean, maybe, but no, probably not.
Les Miles to Kansas.
Yeah, think about that. The guy who maybe would be on the short list for you is about to take the Kansas job. And I love Les more than anybody. But spending $40 million to get to that just doesn't seem smart. And I'm not the biggest Gus Malzahn fan in the world. But again, I don't think any SEC coach gets fired this year because who are you going to get? Are you going to pull someone from the NFL? Are you going to – I mean, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Lane Train ain't coming yet, although I wish. But he ain't coming. He ain't coming here. I would love for Lane to go to Auburn. It would be the best storyline of all time. If Lane Train was the Auburn head coach, sign me up for that story right now. But I don't think it's going to happen. He's not having a great year at FAU this year. He's not stealing any recruits yet from big-time programs. The state of Florida has been weird and everywhere this year. So, again, I don't think it means a ton. I think it was to be expected, but it is still significant for it to have happened. It's not a vote of confidence. It's, hey, you're going to be here next year. But he didn't say he's going to play out his contract. So I think
we can't afford to get rid of you at the moment.
But yeah, if who's the Apple guy who's an Auburn grad? If that dude steps up, something could happen in the next year or two. But right now, you'll be here in 2019. So I'm sure it'll be a storyline next year as well. A big game for Auburn going to Georgia here on Saturday. It doesn't matter in terms of the SEC championship, but I don't know. As I know we're going to pick that game, but I wonder if Gus is breathing a big sigh of relief and that makes them limp into Athens, which is not smart because now Georgia's got everything to play for. Because if Georgia wins out, they're in the playoff. So that could be an interesting line. I wonder if that betting line moved because of that news. So that's where I think you could see an impact, but I don't think there'll be a recruiting impact. I don't think the kid who committed today that had anything to do with it, but it is conveniently good news for Auburn, so that's good for them. But I think that was par for the course. That was to be expected, but it's still important that it happened, I guess.
Yeah, that betting line's still minus 14 UGA.
I would creep that up. I'd creep that up a little bit after this news. I don't know. I feel like your coach is good. Wouldn't you naturally, even if you didn't try to, wouldn't there be a natural drop off? It's in Athens.
Yeah. I feel like, I don't know. I feel like you had to have expected that he wasn't going to get fired because, like you said, I mean, who has that kind of cash to shell out right now? But I think that it's hey, you're not fired right now. Keep this up and you'll be gone. Moving through down the chat. Well, we answered this one earlier. Who do you think is a safe bet to Bama, Kayvon, or Nolan? I don't think either one are safe bets.
Yeah, define safe bet.
Yeah, I don't think either one is a safe bet. Like we've said earlier, there's been a lot of Oregon buzz around Kayvon, and obviously Nolan's committed to Georgia, and they both had very good troll games over the weekend, which we talked about.
The safe bet is you don't get any.
Yeah, so that's safe bet is neither one, so that's the safe bet. But if like I said, Oregon and Georgia are the two that are obviously Nolan's committed and Kayvon.
Yeah, until Nolan visits for the Iron Bowl, if and when that happens, Kayvon's going to be more likely by default. But if and when that happens and he takes that trip, then those odds could shift a little bit, in my opinion. But I think it would still be a major upset if Nolan signed with Bama. He's Georgia bound as of this moment, and I think he sticks with it. But we'll revisit that in late November, Thanksgiving weekend, after the Iron Bowl. I think it could get very interesting there. But until that point, Kayvon by default is the more likely addition for Alabama, despite the Oregon buzz. Oregon's probably number one there, right there. So our sources on the West Coast, who we check in with all the time, still says Alabama's right there. This race is not over. He does not know where he's going yet, and he's visiting Florida this weekend. So it won't hurt for him to see another SEC atmosphere to compare it to the Pac-12 in general. So maybe that helps Bama in some weird way.
Will the IMG guys commit Iron Bowl weekend? Probably not.
I mean, not all three. That will be. Could you imagine if all three of those guys committed together? That would be really ironic because of one story that I can't share until after signing day. But that would be a historic day. 3 5-stars, 3 top 20 guys in America popping on the same day to the same school would be crazy. Now, can one pop? Yes. Could one have already known where he's going to go and then go public that day? I think that's a strong scenario. But all three to pop on that day, I don't see it happening. I think even getting more than one is pretty unrealistic. Not impossible, but pretty unrealistic. Neil of the three seems the most ready to kind of settle things because he's got a smaller pool of schools than Trey. And no one's committed to another school right now. So it's one thing to commit, one thing to flip a kid. So if that happens, then NCAA is going to investigate Alabama.
Yeah.
Very soon.
Yeah. Let's see. Does Bama land Ika?
Another guy who was at Oregon. Man, if you put a dream team together of coaches who could recruit an offensive lineman from Polynesian descent,
Oregon.
it would be what Oregon has right now with Mario Cristobal as the head coach and Joe Salovea as the offensive line coach. Siaki Ika's parents are from Tonga. Tonga is an island west of California, like most of the Polynesian islands. And they live there still. So they still made the trip to Oregon for that official visit. But here's the catch. The only other school who has had them on campus is Alabama. So this is a clear 2-horse race for Ika, who is from Utah, by the way. So he does not live with his parents. But Kev talked about kids dressing up and getting the full gear. Kev loves uniforms, and his number one school in the rankings this past week was Oregon's all-black Jordan-inspired uniforms with the 11s. And Ika was rocking all of that, doing the photo shoot with Salovea. Hakas were going down. The parents were there. If you didn't know anything about recruiting and saw that video and said, hey, this is a recruit, you would have thought he's going to Oregon. It's not over yet. He's going to take his official Bama. His parents are expected, so Bama will have his parents on campus twice as much as any other school. So it's not over, and he could very well end up at Alabama. But there is no doubt that Oregon did everything right this weekend. And again, if you had that dream team, it would be a head coach who's an O-line guy, minority, and then boom, Polynesian legend Joe Salovea, who I think is going into the Polynesian Bowl Hall of Fame this year. Yep. As the position coach there, able to spend time with those guys. He's not technically the position coach, but you understand what I'm saying. Like another O-line line guy. He's the D-line coach, but he's there. And the dinner that they had was Cristobal, Salovea, and the family. So pretty much a dream scenario if you're an Oregon fan, and that would be a big win. Oregon had a big win over Bama last year, and Cristobal flexed a little bit with Penei Sewell. I think Ika could be their guy, if not Thibodeau. They're going to get one of those two. You know, Oregon's going to beat Bama for a kid this year between Thibodeau or Ika. Don't know which one. Thibodeau's a little more likely right now, I would say, just because we know Ika's still taking a trip to Alabama. But it wouldn't shock me if Oregon got even both of them, which would be an ultimate Cristobal flex. But this is a reigning, this is one of the best recruiters in the country. So,
true story. It was really cool to see the dynamic between between Ika and Salovea, and they're doing the little Tongan dance and all that. It was pretty cool.
It's really cool to see this Polynesian influence, man. It's something that if you're a football diehard, you've known about for a long time, but it's cool to see it creeping into college.
Yeah, it really is. And you know, a lot of people like, and I'll say it now, and you know, you can tag me, whatever, at me. I don't care. When you watch my man from LSU do the haka with his family, like that,
It's the best video of the year.
Yeah, I mean, it's, and a lot of people are like, oh, well, like you obviously haven't watched football and you don't understand the significance of it, and you don't understand where it comes from. And you know, it's them preparing themselves. It's their battle. It's their war dance. Like they're preparing themselves to kill or be killed, pretty much. And you know, it's to me, it's like you see the videos, and I'm ready to run through a wall. And
more haka, everybody, recruits, schools, student sections, everybody.
Yeah,
Do the haka.
recruit Polynesian kids just to do the haka. No, I'm kidding. But if you have kids that know how to do the haka, you should be doing it.
Yeah, and it goes without saying, but Tosh Lupoi, Polynesian ace for Alabama. That's why they're in the mix with a lot of these guys. Well, part of the reason why they're in the mix for a lot of these guys.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. Mike Locksley, Ole Miss or Ohio State? Why not Maryland?
I don't think an SEC team fires its coach. And Ohio State, nah, man, that's too much. I think Ohio State would go with probably Ryan Day.
I feel like why would it not be like Maryland? Like,
yeah, Maryland's open right now. So will Locksley be a candidate this early? I don't know. But he's doing everything right on his end. Undefeated, rolling. You got the talent, sure, but you're seeing adjustments that he's making to get guys open. You're seeing diversity in the sets and the play calling. I think Mike has done a great job this year. He's going to be a head coach again. I don't know if it'll be this year or if it'll be that big a gig. Talking Ohio State. But I don't expect it in the SEC. I don't think he would take it. Why would he take it, the Ole Miss job, even if it came open? I wouldn't.
Well, no, Ole Miss, I don't think Ole Miss comes open. Matt Luke's in his first year of his deal.
Yeah, didn't they decrease the probation a little bit?
Like they're going, like they
Ole
can't
Miss
go.
Is gonna be fine.
Pretty sure their bowl ban's up after this year.
Yeah, that too.
So yeah, I don't think he loses his job yet. Let's see. Who are the visitors for this weekend? Well, we talked about it earlier. Jordan Battle, and who was the second official? The running back.
You get the running back from Texas, who's uncommitted, 4-star, and then to be determined. I'm still looking into if he's visiting Keon Zipper, the tight end from Lakeland, Florida. Florida lean, Miami's in it too. Bama's kind of hung around. And this is a kid who, I don't know if we call it getting social media like these other guys, but he's trolled pretty well before because he has been very public about leaving the state of Florida for college, although everyone expects him at Florida or Miami still to this point, even with that Bama visit to go down. He said he's taking a visit next week to Alabama, so we weren't sure if that meant this weekend or the following game, because of course the remaining 3 games for Alabama are all at home. So we got to get some clarification there from Mr. Zipper, who is probably the top available tight end in the class. And I think this is another one where you look at the season, and if you're a tight end prospect and an athletic one like Keon is, he's a little undersized. You got to look at what Irv Smith's doing. This man is playing his way straight into the NFL. I saw a mock draft that had him in the first round. Irv Smith.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And he's a great story, and his dad was a first rounder and all that stuff at tight end. Great. But if you would have told me preseason Irv Smith was on any mock draft in the first round, I would have slapped you. So that's how much, speaking of Mike Locksley, that's how much this team has progressed and how many weapons this team has been able to showcase. So if and when he takes that visit, with what Irv Smith's doing, that is something very intriguing for a kid like Keon Zipper. Now, when we talk about positions and numbers, how high on the spectrum tight end is, I don't know. I don't think it's that high at this point. You've got basically all of the tight ends beyond Hale Henches coming back next year. I think Irv has another year of eligibility, although apparently he's a first-round pick now, so he may leave as well. But you do have some depth at tight end with Forrestal, Tennyson, Kedrick, James. There are guys there. You got one already committed in 2020, so that could be the class where I think you see Bama kind of loading up a little bit. You got one committed already in this class as well with Jaleel Billingsley. So I don't think it's a need in terms of we have to bring in 2 tight ends compared to bringing in a second running back, which I think is a bigger need, another defensive back or 2, which I think is a big need, edge rusher, inside backer, interior D lineman, offensive tackle. All of those are ahead of tight end for me, but that can change if a kid like Zipper turns around and says, "Hey, I want to jump in." I don't think Bama would tell him no immediately. I think they would look into it. So
yeah. Moving down, do you guys not have your own team recruiting chats asking for a friend?
is that to us?
Yeah.
We cover Alabama. This is an Alabama chat, and we're talking Alabama recruiting today. So you want us to talk about those guys? You want us to talk about the Avery Cougars? I don't think y'all want that because there'll be a whole bunch of stupid stories.
They're 5-1 in conference.
There you go. They may win the conference this year. Get them a ring, but yeah, I don't think y'all want that. So,
said that for y'all. Never mind.
Oh, there. Okay. Yes, we do have that chat. It just happens on the phone between Kevin and I, not here.
So yeah. Okay, last question, and we'll wrap things up. Do you think Bama's dominance is bad for college football? No.
Nah, man. You got to have something to live up to.
You got to have somebody. There's got to be somebody that is nationally hated. It was Tebow in Florida. It was for a long time. You had the Tebow Florida hatred that everybody. If you weren't a Florida fan, you hated Florida. That's kind of shifted to, and then it was, if you're not Ohio State, you hate Ohio. But if you don't like Bama, you hate Bama. So
yeah, I mean, does anyone hate Clemson besides South Carolina people?
Yeah, I was about to say South Carolina people. Yeah, I had to think about that for a second, but yeah, no. South Carolina, outside the state of South Carolina, I mean, probably not. I guess. I mean.
Yeah,
I find myself watching a Clemson game, being kind of like, oh, go Clemson.
I just want this collision course to happen. I'm not shy.
I want Trevor Lawrence first Tua. So
let's just give us that, football gods. We only have about a year and 2 months for that possibility.
Yeah.
That means it has to happen in this postseason or next postseason because last I checked, Bama's not playing Clemson in 2019, and Tua's going to go pro after next year. So we have a year and a couple of months for this possibility to go down. Tua versus Trevor at the college level, and I think it just needs to happen. They're the 2 best teams, they're the 2 best quarterbacks. Just do it. That's why Bama being this dominant, being bad for college football. I don't get. They haven't won 10 straight natties. They haven't even won 2 straight natties. They've won 1 straight natty. Now this year they're the favorite to win 2 in a row, but it's not like there's been a super long run of dominance. Every year or 2, it's cut into by an Auburn, by an Ohio State, by a Clemson. Bama, Clemson have played the last 3 years, and it's gone literally back and forth. Bama won the first one, Clemson won the second one, Bama won the third one. And this year we might get part 4. And if that continues, Clemson would win this one. So I don't think Bama being at the top is bad for college football. I think Nick Saban is a guy everybody knows. Everybody understands the SEC tradition. So the SEC being in power is great for college football because it's kind of unique compared to every other conference. And again, how many teams are in the hunt for a national championship? 7, 8 every year? It's really not longer than that. So every other team in the country has plenty to play for, whether it's a team like Texas or Miami trying to get back to national relevance, new coaches at new programs at their alma maters or programs where they've had success or always wanted to be at, like Dan Mullen at Florida, Scott Frost at Nebraska. There's so many millions of other storylines to enjoy that it's not just about the national champion in college. Now, at the NFL level, it's all about that ring for sure, but I don't think that holds true in college. There's still the NFL draft, all these prospects playing everywhere, rivalries that are fun no matter who wins the game for the most part. There's so many other elements of college football to enjoy, especially with television now, and you could watch every game. I could watch like every Navy game if I wanted to. So I think Bama being this dominant is an overstatement because they're really not that dominant compared to everyone else. Yes, they are, but in general, no, they're not. They don't win the national championship every year. They win it every other year, but not every year. So those other teams get that glory, and often to get to that point, you got to beat Bama, which Ohio State and Clemson actually did. So I don't think it's bad for college football. It's good to have the guy that you're shooting up towards. And right now it's Alabama. And the beauty of college football is that it doesn't last because the players leave, the coaches leave, all of that. So Tua's got a year and a couple months left at Alabama, y'all. So enjoy it.
Yep. So that's it's the end of the live chat that we're gonna get to today. Once again, you guys, if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe. Go ahead and subscribe to us on iTunes, on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter at CABC Pod. Follow us on Facebook at Crimson and Blue Chips. And follow us on Instagram at CABC Pod. Also, check out the website at crimsonandbluechips.com. No www. Please don't do that. It won't go. It doesn't go. Crimsonandbluechips.com. We've got a bunch of good stuff up there, recruiting wise. My uniform stuff. Bama fan Dave's got a bunch of good stuff up there. And we're just going to keep continuing to deliver you the best quality content that we can, whether it's here in podcast form or whether it's on the website in written story form. If you have any suggestions for stories that you would like to see, you could DM any of the social media accounts, or you could DM myself, Bama fan Dave, and we can get those stories written. And so, like I said, subscribe, go to all the social medias, subscribe, like, all that good stuff, and check out the website.
All right. Yeah. Check out the website for sure. But that'll do it for today. We'll get into picks and all those other things on the website. And of course, in our weekend preview pod, we will talk Bama, Mississippi State for those of you who came here for the latest on Joe Moorhead and company trying to invade Tuscaloosa and do something that nobody has been able to do this year. We'll get to that at some point, but that day was not today. Recruiting focus, our bread and butter still, even with all of the growth and expansion. So thanks for hanging out. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Thanks to producer Kev for helping out. Check out the site again. Those guys are busting their tail for you, really, truly for you. So thanks, everybody. God bless. Garcia and the crew out.